Namaste. Today, I'll be talking about Silappatikaram, or Epic of the Anklet, a great Tamil Mahakavya that has a very important and significant place, not just in Tamil literature or Tamil history, but the overall Indian civilizational context. In the context of Bharatiya literature, Indian history, Indian culture, and the Hindu civilization or the dharmic civilizational context. It's such an important Mahakavya that we are going to talk about today. I thank atharvforum for giving me an opportunity to present to you about this great epic and its significance. Everyone likes to hear a story. So let me start with the story of Silappatikaram in short. Long ago, on the east coast of India, South India, there was this seaport called Pugar. It's called Poombuhar today. In olden days, it was also called Kaviri Poompattinam. So in that great harbor town lived two wealthy merchant families. And one of them had a son called Kovalan, who was endowed with great beauty. He was a charming youth. And the other family had this girl called Kannagi, who was very beautiful, and she just equaled Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, in looks as well as in her character and in her Sheila. So both these families decided to come together, and there was a great wedding when Kannagi and Kovalan married each other. For a short while, they had a great, blissful life in love and affection. Once, Kovalan, a rich merchant son he was, while passing through the streets of this Puhar, he chanced upon a charming young dancer, a courtesan, what we call as Ganika in Sanskrit. So the dancing girls were a part and parcel of the ancient Indian society. There was this girl called Madhavi, who was very skilled at dance and music and all the arts. Kovalan just fell for her. She left Kannagi, and then he went to live with Madhavi. And he also lost a lot of his money over this time. But Kannagi, a chaste wife she was, she didn't have any bitter feeling towards Kovalan, even when he was living this life. She was living almost like a tapaswini in her home, following all the dharmic principles of life, attending to her parents, in-laws, and giving alms to all the people who approach householders for their sustenance. And once, a few months passed like that, and a few years too. And there was this great festival called Indira Vira, festival for Indra in the Puhar city. And all the young men and women of the city, in fun and frolic, they just went to the beach front, they played, they sang, they danced. And both Kovalan and Madhavi also went there. And both were adept in dance and music. And so there was a duel in singing. So first Madhavi sang a song such that, oh, this lover, I thought he was always in love with me, but he betrayed me. Then Kovalan sang another song saying that this girl who is so charming, she has someone else in her mind. So initially it started like a very casual, the chiding between the lovers. But at one point, both of them started interpreting the message in a different way. And there was a quarrel between them. And then Kovalan thought, oh, what I have done. So she left Madhavi and she accused her of being not loyal to him. He came back to Kannagi, who was waiting for him. And he apologized profusely to her. And Kannagi, in all her magnanimity, gave him forgiveness. And she said, it's okay. At that time, they realized that Kovalan had kind of become a pauper. He didn't have any wealth left. And his name was also spoiled in Puhar. So then both Kannagi and Kovalan, they said, let's get out of this city. Let's go elsewhere and then rebuild our fortunes. What are we left with? Kovalan asked. Kannagi said, I have my jewels. So looks like it is a very ancient Indian custom where a family always relies on the jewels of the wife of the house in such dire circumstances when they fall into financial troubles. So then they both decide to leave the city at the daybreak, secretly, without anyone knowing. So first, Kovalan persuades Kannagi that, they decide to go to the Pandya kingdom and its capital city, Madurai. Kovalan says, the forest route, it's very difficult to cross. You lived like a princess in this city. How will you bear all these sufferings? Then Kannagi said, when I am with you, none of those sufferings matter to me. I will follow you. So then they both set out. They start walking. They cross the Kaveri river and the boundary of the Chola kingdom. And they meet a saintly person, a Jain woman monk called Agni Adigal, who becomes their counsel. So then they travel through forest routes. They cross different landscapes. There are fields, there are desert-like lands, there are orchids. So on this long journey, this Agni Adigal gives teachings about morals, ethics, and dharma to this couple. They also worship at various places. There are holy spots during their journey. So then, thus they go and they reach Madurai. So then the Agni Adigal leaves. She leaves them at the habitation of cowherds. So there is this lady called Madari, who is a very affectionate person. So she says, till your life is settled, you can stay here in these cowherds. Then the tender feelings of love between the Kannagi and Kovalan starts reappearing. Oh, what a great sinner have I been all these years. And now he thinks that his life has taken the right path. So the next day, Kovalan says, so how shall we rebuild our future? So Kannagi removes one of her anklets. So this anklets, what is called nupura, it is considered as an auspicious jewelry for women. And the tradition holds that as long as she is wearing the anklet in one leg, it's fine. It's not necessary that she needs to, at least a minimum, she needs to wear it in one leg. So she removes one of her anklet and gives it to him. So this is very exquisitely made, very artistic, and it is very precious. So you can sell it. And this is enough for us to start some trade here and we'll prosper. So Kovalan takes it to the bazaar. The Madurai is a very big, prosperous city under the rulership of the Pandya king. So the bazaar is buzzing with activity. There is this royal goldsmith. So he spots Kovalan holding an anklet in his hand. He comes around and he looks at the anklet. He's bewildered. Oh, the anklet looks very much royal. And then he tells Kovalan, Why don't I inspect it? Give it to me. He takes it. And this goldsmith, he is an evil person. So he has stolen one of the anklets of the queen of Madurai. And then when the king found that out, a search is on. There is an announcement saying that whoever finds the thief, he will be rewarded, and the thief will be severely punished. When the goldsmith looks at this anklet, it is exactly the same like that of the queen, as fate would have it. So then he asks Kovalan to just wait at a place in the bazaar. So the goldsmith runs to the king, and the king and the queen have some small quarrel. The queen is a bit angry with the king, and there is some issue that has come up in the kingdom. And the Pandyan king, who is a very dharmic ruler, at that moment, he is under extreme stress. So the goldsmith takes this anklet and shows it to the king. Oh, Maharaj, I have found the thief. And here is the anklet that was stolen. The king looks at it. Oh, that's great. So then he calls some soldiers and tells them, the thief has been identified. Kill him and then bring the anklet. Kondru a chilambu konarhe. He orders this at that moment. Then these executioners, they go with the goldsmith. They look at Kovalan, and then he doesn't look like a thief at all. He is so innocent. They ask the goldsmith, is he the real thief? We don't think so. Then the goldsmith says, oh, you people don't know in what all ways the thieves come. So convinced, one of those executioners, he just chops Kovalan's head, and Kovalan just falls dead. So this news reaches Kannagi, who is eagerly waiting for her husband. And the moment she hears this news, she is in big rage, big grief. She runs to the city square. In olden days, these royal ladies and ladies from very high families, they were not even supposed to come on the street. So it was considered as some kind of not up to their maryada. But Kannagi, when she heard this news, she runs on the Madurai streets. She goes to a place where Kovalan lies dead. The blood is gushing out of this body. She grieves a lot. She proclaims to all the onlookers that my husband is not a thief. Is there no dharma in this city? Is there no values in this city? So she cries like this, and then there is some ashariri that is heard in the sky that, oh, lady, your husband is innocent. But at that moment, so she kind of has a mystical feeling that her husband tells her that I am leaving, you be here. So her grief turns into anger. With her hair disheveled, she just runs. The day just breaks, and she runs to the royal palace. And the guards of the palace, the security guards, they are alarmed. They run to the king and say, oh, one woman is running towards the court. She looks like Kali. Anger is written on all her face. So then she enters the court and accuses the king straight. Oh, king, you have punished an innocent. You have deviated from the path of dharma. My husband is not a thief. So then the Pandya king says, oh, lady, no, Pandyas never deviate from dharma. So then Kannagi asks, okay, if he was the thief of the anklet, your anklets are made of what? Then the king says they are made of pearl. So then Kannagi, she removes another anklet from her leg, and then she breaks it open right in the court, and out of it, the red ruby gems scatter all over the place. So instantly it is proven that Kovalan is innocent, and the king has punished him in an unjust manner. So the moment Pandya king sees this, he is devastated. Oh, am I the king? I am the thief. Saying this, the king instantly falls dead right there. And the queen, who is a very chaste wife, she cannot bear his separation. She also falls dead right there. And the whole court sees all this in astonishment. Still, Kannagi's anger is not, her anger is not vanquished. So she walks all through the city again, and in her rage, she plucks her left breast and throws it away. And she utters a curse. Oh, Agni, burn this city. So Agni Deva appears, and then Kannagi orders to burn down the city entirely, leaving Brahmins, sages, cows, and the chaste women, the Pativratas, the young children and the old, leaving them burn down everything in this city. So the whole city burns, and at that time, the guardian deity of Madurai, she comes and consoles Kannagi and says that, oh Kannagi, all this is happened because of karma. In the previous birth, Kovalan was an official of a king, and taking the king's order, he punished an innocent man, and this is the result of that. So then Kannagi walks out of Madurai. She walks towards the Chera kingdom now, from the Pandya kingdom. She goes to the Western Ghat ranges, the southern end of that, and then she climbs a mountain called Sengundru. There she just stands near a tree, and the hill tribes, when they see her, they think that she is a divinely possessed woman. And at that moment, a Vimana comes from the Devaloka, and where the Kovalan is seated there in the body of a Deva, in a celestial body. So he asks her to come. Kannagi ascends that Vimana and he goes there. And the hill tribes, when they see that, they go and report it to their king, the Chera king, Senguttuvan. And then he comes there, and then he says, oh, Kannagi, she is Patini Devam. Patni means the one who is a chaste woman, Pativratā. She is considered as the form of Devi herself. And then he says, I will build a grand temple to this Patini Devam right here. And then the Chera king, he says, it won't be an ordinary temple. I will go all the way to Himalayas. I will defeat any king who encounters me on the way there. I will take the stone from the holy Himalayas, bath it in the Ganga river, bring it here, and then build the temple. So as the story goes, the Chenkuttuvan actually, with his armies, go all the way. He crosses multiple kingdoms. And the Kanaka and Vijaya, the names of the kings mentioned are that. And then Nutruvar Kannar, it is believed to be Shatakarni, and he battles all those kings. He takes stone from the Himalayas, baths it in the Ganga, sanctifies it, comes and builds this grand temple and performs the yajna, and all the kings, the Chola, Chera, and the king from Sri Lanka, the Gajabahu, everyone comes, and then they all worship Kannagi as a Patini Devam. So Kannagi thus becomes a Devi of all, the people of all communities, the people of all lands. So thus ends this story. So the author of this story is Ilango Adigal. He is considered as a Jain monk. As per the legend, he is considered as the brother of Chenguttuvan himself, who built the temple for Kannagi. It is said that when he was born, he was a younger brother, and a Jyotishi said that he will sit on the throne and not his elder brother. So he didn't want, the succession line to be broken like that. And he declared when he came of age, when he knew this, that I will become a monk so that the throne is reserved for Senguttuvan. But this is a legend. It's not mentioned inside the core text of Silapathikaram. So thus the author himself, he was an epitome of sacrifice. Cilappatikāram is dated to a very ancient period. In fact, all authors have opined that it is no later than 5th century CE. It must be before that. Some of them say it is 2nd century CE, but 3rd to 5th century CE. So that is the largely accepted date for the epic. In any case, it is 1500 years old. That makes it very, very ancient. And this epic, it is a continuation of what is called a Sangam era in Tamil literature. The Sangam era is dated from 300 BCE to about 300 CE, 600, 500 years of multiple texts and multiple poets, multiple kings are mentioned in the Sangam classics, anthologies. But this Silappatikaram is a text which is appearing at the fag end of that era as a culmination of the literary output of this entire period. So around this time, the Tamil country gets consolidated into 3 major kingdoms, the Chera, Chola, and Pandya. In the Sangam classics, literally hundreds of kings are mentioned. The Chera, Chola, Pandyas are also mentioned, but there are many small kings and the chieftains of principalities, they are also mentioned. So Silappatikaram appeared at a period when the Tamil land, Tamil Nadu as well as today's Kerala, which was the Chera Nadu in the ancient times. So it got consolidated into 3 major empires. So that way, it is a very important milestone in the history of South India itself. So the text says that it was written to emphasize 3 tenets. We shall compose a poem with songs to explain 3 tenets, it says. அரசியல் பிழைத்தோர்க்கு அறம் கூற்றாவதும் உரைசால் பத்தினியை உயர்ந்தோர் ஏத்தலும் ஊழ்வினை உறுத்து வந்து ஊட்டும் என்பது. These are the 3 tenets. What are they? Even kings, if they break the law, the Raja Dharma, the eternal Dharma will come as death to them. So this is the first tenet. Dharma is the ultimate controller of all rulers, all Kshatriyas. Nothing is higher than Dharma. So says the Mahabharata, Upanishads, and everything. So the same thing is emphasized here. In the Ramayana, we see that Dasharatha ultimately dies because of the curse that he received through the sin of killing Shravana Kumara, who was a Rishi Kumara. In a similar manner, the Pandya king executed the innocent Kovalan and without a fair trial. But when the truth dawned on him, he kills himself. Or rather, we can say, the shock of him delivering an unjust verdict, the dharmic impulse, that itself kills him. That is the first tenet. The second one, a chaste wife, a patini, will be respected and worshipped by great men everywhere. So this is how Kannagi becomes a Devi, a goddess. And as we know, Pativratas are praised in all the Hindu texts, the Itihasas, the Puranas, Dharma Shastras, even folk narratives. But there is no other epic in the Indian literary tradition that is so centered around Patini, or the chaste wife, as a hero and as a main character. That way, Silapathikaram is unique. The third tenet, karma ever manifests itself and is always fulfilled. So the karma theory in action is referred all through this epic. So the Kovalan suffering due to past deeds. So this is similar to many past-life stories in the Mahabharata, Puranas, and all other epics. So Kannagi is a great woman icon of Bharat. She is an icon of Dharma, an icon of Shakti. Kannagi remains almost a silent but strong presence in terms of action, till Kovalan was killed in an unjust manner. But at that moment, something happens to her. The Shakti in her manifests. She summons Agni to burn the city, as we just saw. In the Ramayana, Sita enters fire in the Agni Pravesha episode to prove her chastity. In the Mahabharata, Draupadi is born of the fire. She is called Yajnaseni. In a similar manner, in this epic, Kannagi summons Agni to burn down the city out of her dharmic rage. So in all these three major epics, the woman associated with fire play a crucial role. The divine feminine explodes against the adharmic structures that intentionally or otherwise violate the moral principles or the dharmic life. It is in continuation of the Rigvedic idiom. In fact, the Rig Veda says, Tam Agnivarnam tapasa jvalantim vairochanim karma phaleshu jushtam durgam devi gum sharanamaham prapadye. It calls Durga as Agnivarna, she who is of the hue of fire. So that's what is seen in this Kannagi episode. And she is the Kannagi plucking her left breast and throwing it out. It is a very, very powerful metaphor. The Devi is also in the Ardhanarishwara form. Her right chest or right breast is of nourishing nature, and the left breast, it always punishes the adharmic forces. So we can correlate this story in those terms as well. In course of the Cilappatikāram epic itself, the Shakti aspect of Kannagi is stressed in more than one ways. We'll see it in course of the talk. Overall, Cilappatikāram is a Bharatiya epic, though it is written in Tamil language. This is a very important point to note because this epic is not very popular outside of Tamil Nadu, and people think that it is just some local story. There are references to Himalayas and Ganga that we saw in course of the story. There are phrases like Podilayinum Imayamayinum. Podil means the Malaya mountain, Malayagiri, which is the southernmost range in the Western Ghat. Imayam means Himalaya. So in one place the epic says, be it the Malaya mountain, be it the Himalaya mountain. It just speaks both these mountains just next to each other. And the Kashi and Ganga are spoken in many places in the epic. There are references to Ramayana in the epic. When Kannagi and Kovalan leave the Pukar city at the daybreak, how the city became, the poet says, Arundiral Ilanda Ayodhi pole Perum Peyer Nagaram Perum Pedutrathu. The Pukar city became so distressed, like the Ayodhya when Rama and Sita left Ayodhya. So that shows how popular Ramayana was in the Tamil country and Tamil culture. That, the poet compares an event in Ramayana to a specific moment in his epic. And when the Agni Adigal counsels Kovalan not to lose heart, she cites Ramayana. She says that even the divine Rama had to live in exile, lose his wife, face so many sufferings. So, don't lose heart in your life. And the Mahabharata is mentioned in multiple places. And Kannagi is compared to Arundhatī, the sagely wife of Vasiṣṭha, who was the foremost of Pativratās. And rishis like Agastya and Vasiṣṭha. One speciality of Cilappatikāram is that it arose at a time when Vedic culture was well established in Tamil country. I spoke about the Sangam era, right? The 500 years of literature, right? So that is replete with Vedic and Puranic references. But there is not much of Jain and Buddhist culture in the Sangam corpus, because these two, they came slightly later to Tamil Nadu. But Silappatikaram arose at a time when all the three spiritual traditions, the Vedic, Jain, as well as Buddhist dharmas, were well established in Tamil Nadu. The Kovalan's parents themselves, actually they adopted Jaina dharma, according to when Kovalan reaches Madurai, a Brahmana comes. He brings a message from Madhavi, who says that she has given birth to a child and she is Kovalan's daughter. So that is Manimekalai. And the Manimekalai becomes a Buddhist monk later. And there is a sequel epic called Manimekalai, which is written after Silappatikaram. And the Kovalan sends through the same Brahmana message to his parents, asking for forgiveness, that he has secretly escaped from the city, asking them to forgive him. So they become Jains at the end of their life, it is shown. So true to this, though Ilango Adigal is mentioned as a Jain monk, he refers to all the traditions in a very respectful manner. The Kannagi Kovalan wedding itself takes place according to Vedic rites. Ma muduparpan marai vali kattida, ti valam seidu, the poet says. The bride and groom were guided by a Vedic priest, and they encircle the fire to complete their marriage oaths. And the yajnas are mentioned in many places throughout the epic. And the worship of all the deities, Shiva, Vishnu, Skanda, Durga, and Indra, is mentioned. There are temples dedicated to all these deities in both the Puhar city as well as the Madurai city. So this means that the temple culture in Hinduism is quite ancient. By Hinduism, I mean the Vedic dharma. So some historians say that the temple culture came into the Vedic tradition from the Buddhist and Jain cultures. They were the ones first to build the stupas and viharas, and the Hindus copied from there. That is simply not true. In fact, the Jain monk himself testifies that how many temples dedicated to these deities existed in many parts of these cities. So this is a strong evidence for that. And within Silappatikaram, there are three great hymns. They are almost stotra-like: Vettuvavari, Āycciyar kuravai, and Kundra kuravai. These three hymns are dedicated to Durga, Krishna, and Skanda. So the first hymn, Vettuvavari, It is sung by the hunter tribes in praise of goddess Durga. When Kovalan and Kannagi, they walk around, en route, they encounter these hunter tribes. So the hunter tribes welcome them. They stay there. They give them food, and then they conduct the ceremony for goddess Durga. And the songs sung by the hunter tribes are full of beautiful veneration of Durga. It talks about Durga having 3 eyes, Durga standing on the head of the buffalo demon Mahisha, and also on the head of the Vedas and Upanishads. Look at the way Ilango Adigal connects it. So in one place he says, "Aanai tol porthu puliyin uri uduthu kaanathu yerumai karundalai mel nindraya." Oh, you stand on the head of the buffalo demon. In the next line he says, "Vanor vananga marai mel marayagi ஞான சுடர் விளக்காய் அழுக்கின்றியே நிற்பாய்." You stand on the head of the Vedas as the light of Jnana Upanishads. So this is a song on Durga sung by the hunter tribes that comes in Silapathikaram. And there are practices like shamanism. Even today we see in folk traditions in Hinduism where the women get possessed by the divine spirit of Devi, and then they become an oracle. They start speaking out. So there is a female shaman among the hunter tribes. So she says this Kannagi is a divine woman. One day she will be worshipped by all, the female shaman says. And this Durga Stuti, in fact, we can call it a full-fledged Durga Stuti. And there are people who actually chant it during Navaratri and other festivals. So beautiful. The other hymn is Āycciyar kuravai. So when Kannagi and Kovalan are staying in the habitat of cowherds, I mentioned as part of the story, and when the Kovalan has gone to the bazaar and Kannagi is very much worried, and then all the cowherd girls, they get together and then they say, "Let us sing and dance in praise of Krishna." So there are beautiful songs praising Krishna and Balarama, all the deeds of Krishna, the killing of Kamsa, Krishna going as a messenger of the Pandavas to the Kauravas, Vamanavatara, Ramavatara, churning of the Milky Ocean. All these are mentioned in these beautiful songs. At one place, the cowherds sing, "Narayana enna navenna nave." If there is a tongue that doesn't say Narayana, what is the use of having that tongue? That is there. And then there is the third hymn called Kundra Kuravai. So this is sung by the hill tribes. As I mentioned in the story, at the end, when Kannagi goes to that mountain and ascends heaven, and the hill tribes see her, and when the king comes, then they conduct a ceremony where they sing the praise of Skanda, the god of the hill tribe people. So all the Skanda Purana legends are mentioned there. So the Skanda being born as a 6-headed Shadanana from Shiva's third eye, and how Parvati brings her up, and how he kills the demons, the Tarakasura, and how he marries the Devasena, who is the daughter of Indra, and also Valli, who is the daughter of a hunter king. So all these Puranic legends of Skanda are sung by the hill tribes. So these 3 hymns that I mentioned, they so beautifully illustrate how the Vedic Puranic tradition and the folk traditions got highly integrated and intertwined with each other. So these hymns in Cilappatikāram are a great historical testimony of that process. Rivers like Kaveri and Vaigai are mentioned as holy in the epic. And there are many references to statecraft. When it mentions about trade, it says the people from many parts of India. There are mentions about Gandhara. There is mention about the northern regions. There is mention about the western regions, the current day Saurashtra, Maharashtra, those places, how the traders and artisans from these places come to cities like Puhar. There is even mention about Yavanas, the Greek traders in the seaport. So that way, there is so much of historical information that is embedded in this epic. The other aspect is references to music and dance. So all through the epic, so when Madhavi, the dancing girl, her dancing prowess is narrated, the many forms of dances mentioned in the Bharata's Natya Shastra. In fact, the name of Bharata itself is referred inside Silappatikaram in a few places. And when it comes to music, the music tradition in Tamil Nadu is very ancient. So much that the Sapta Swaras, right? Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma. So there are names like Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara, Madhyama. There are pure Tamil names for these Sapta Swaras. Vilari, Tuttam, like that, in the Tamil tradition. So many nuances about ragas. So the raga names are actually mentioned in Silappatikaram, the Tamil names. Raga is called Pan in ancient Tamil music. There are raga names that are mentioned in Silappatikaram. Musicologists have studied it and analyzed it, and what are the parallels with Bharata's Natya Shastra and the overall Indian music tradition. They have outlined those aspects. Silappatikaram is the earliest non-Sanskrit Mahakavya all over India, and thus it holds a very special place. It has much less Sanskrit words compared to all the later Tamil Kavyas or the Bhakti movement works. In fact, it has less than 10% of Sanskrit words. But still, it is so full of the Sanskrit or the Vedic Bharatiya idioms. That is very important to note. And another unique thing about Silappatikaram is that woman is a hero of this kavya. There are women in kavyas like Shakuntala, for example, Swapna Vasavadattam, but they are mostly depicted as meek characters. But here, the Kannagi, in the first half, she is depicted as a very chaste wife, but then the Shakti is manifested through her, and she becomes so fierce. So these twin aspects of the divine feminine is brought out so beautifully in this kavya. And the anklet, it's called Nupura or Manjira in Sanskrit. That anklet, Silambu in Tamil, that itself becomes a very sublime metaphor. In fact, it is the anklet that becomes a symbolism for all the three tenets that the epic wants to emphasize, right? About the Rajaniti, the Patini goddess, and also the karma effects. So that is why this epic is named as Silappatikaram, which means that the epic of an anklet. And all spiritual traditions are mentioned respectfully, as I outlined. This is very unique to Silappatikaram. In Sanskrit, there are kavyas and dramas. There are literary works in many other languages of India, but typically they are aligned to a Shaiva or Vaishnava orientation. Sometimes they are Vedic. There will be Shiva, Vishnu, all Hindu gods and goddesses are mentioned, but not non-Vedic traditions like Jaina or Bauddha. To my knowledge, this is the only Indian epic where both Vedic and non-Vedic traditions are all given their due and respectful place, and they form a very important and significant, they take a very important and central role in the whole of the epic. So that is something very unique and beautiful. And the literary merit of Cilappatikāram is very superior. Lot of literary critics have written about the way the rasa is brought out in many episodes of the epic is beautiful. That makes Ilango Adigal one of the greatest poets of India, in the lines of Valmiki, Vyasa, Kalidasa, Bhasa, and Bhavabhuti. But unfortunately, the name of Ilango Adigal is not counted among these two. It is time that we correct it and a due recognition is given to this great poet and sage of India. And the Kannagi worship has a continuous unbroken chain. It is not the temple built by Chenguttuvan, Seran. It went into ruins. In fact, some archaeologists are trying to identify whether there are any remains of the original temple. As a particular spot is identified in the Tamil Nadu Kerala border, where some people are conducting worship on some special days, like full moon day in the Chaitra month every year, which is the day to honor the mother goddess. But the Kannagi worship has been continuing in many different forms. There are temples inside the Tamil Nadu where Kannagi is worshipped along with Kali in a few temples. There are temples for Pattini Devam, Kannagi in Sri Lanka. It is worshipped by both the Tamil people as well as the Simhala people in the island. In Kerala, there are many Bhagavati temples. There is Kodungallur Bhagavati, Chottanikara Bhagavati, Chengandur Bhagavati. So these are very renowned and popular temples for Durga. And the iconography of Devi Bhagavati in these temples, she has 8 hands, like Ashtabhuja Durga. And in one of the hands, along with the Trishula, the Khadga, and other weapons, she also holds an anklet. So scholars have pointed out that the anklet signifies that it is nothing but the connection with the Kannagi worship. So this great epic, it has seen some commentaries also. There has been 2 great commentaries, one by Arumbada Uraigarar and Adiyarku Nallar. It was studied by the Tamil Pandits as part of the literary tradition. But since it was authored by a Jain monk, it did not come into the mainstream Shaiva, Vaishnava, Bhakti tradition of Tamil Nadu. So slowly, by the time we were in the 18th, 19th century, just the name of Silappatikaram was known because it is mentioned in a lot of ancient texts, but there were not many scholars studying it. So when the printing press became very popular, Uve Swaminatha Aiyar, the great Tamil scholar, he searched all over Tamil Nadu for the manuscripts of Silappatikaram. With a lot of difficulty and struggles, he compiled all of them and he published what can be called a critical edition of Silappatikaram in 1892, along with a commentary. And the commentary was not fully available, unfortunately. It was lost. The manuscripts were lost. Only portions of it were available. And then he, as a few more manuscripts were coming, he created multiple editions of it till 1944. And once Silappatikaram was published, it became instantly popular all over Tamil Nadu. And such a captivating story. And it played a very big role in the cultural renaissance of Tamil Nadu in the late 19th century and the 20th century as well. Around the same time, the Aryan Dravidian racist theory was also getting popular. in Tamil Nadu. The Robert Caldwell fabricated the Dravidian racist theories out of very rich imagination of Aryan invasion and all that. And some among the Tamil scholars and Tamil Nadu historians who bought it, they were always trying to see whether Tamil ancient literature can be somehow twisted or deconstructed or distorted to support this Dravidian racist theory. So, as I mentioned in the story, when Chenguttuvan went all the way to Himalaya to bring, the holy stone for the Kannagi temple, they reinterpreted it, saying that the Tamils and North Indians were always antagonistic to each other. And that is the reason why Chenguttuvan took his armies to conquer the northern kings. So this is just one example. And then they said that Kannagi has nothing to do with the Shakti or Devi worship. She is like a separate Tamil goddess, which the Tamil kings and people worshipped. How systematically Tirukural, Shaiva, Vaishnava canon, Silappatikāram, every text of ancient Tamil literature was systematically de-Hinduized. To say that it is not part of the overall Hindu cultural landscape, but something very separate. As we saw in the first part of this talk, entire Cilappatikāram is replete with references to Vedic and Puranic idioms. In fact, the very epic is a Purana in some sense. There is really no historical core to this story. Archaeological excavations have been done in Puhar. Some structures have been found. Madurai, of course, is a very ancient city. There is no clear evidence to show that the Cilappatikāram story actually happened. Perhaps it was a very ancient folklore, which the poet has beautifully weaved, along with many Vedic, Jain, and Buddhist idioms, with a message of dharma embedded in it as a life philosophy to instruct people on dharma. That seems to be the whole purpose of Ilango Adigal writing this epic. So this de-Hinduizing of all the ancient Tamil texts was pointed out at that time itself by all the eminent Tamil scholars. But unfortunately, when the DMK gained political power, they sponsored a lot of pseudo scholars to write books, and the government supported those false narratives to perpetuate into the Tamil psyche. And it has taken so many decades for the common people to realize that the whole thing was a complete fabrication. I think in the last 2 decades, much of the Dravidian false propaganda has fallen off. So that is something very heartening to know. This Dravidian stint with Cilappatikāram has a very, very interesting flip-flop. So E.V. Ramaswamy Aiyar, or Periyar, the anti-Hindu Dravidian racist, claimed himself to be a rationalist. So he claimed himself to be a man with scientific temper. So he dismissed the entire Cilappatikāram as a Aryan propaganda. So in 1951, in one of his very famous hate speech series, he said, can a true Dravidian or a true Tamil really study Cilappatikāram and conduct meetings and conferences on it? I can only say that those who uphold Cilappatikāram want to be certified as good boys by the Brahmin hegemony. What is there in Cilappatikāram except that it is a propaganda text of the Aryans? From the commencement to the end, it is brimming with Aryan concepts, and Tamils should reject it. So this was Uve Ramaswamy Aiyar Periyar. And by the way, he similarly dismissed Tirukkural as well, because Tirukkural teaches morals, and as a rationalist, he thought all those morals and ethical principles of Tirukkural were useless. And then many rebuttals came for this. One of the famous scholars of Cilappatikāram, Ma Po Sivañanam, he said, oh, so according to Periyar, an individual woman, out of just the sheer power of dharma, fighting against injustice, that is Aryan concept. A Chera king taking his armies and subjugating the northern kings, is that an Aryan concept? All the great values of life and dharma, were these Aryan concepts? So he gave a befitting rebuttal to Uve Ramaswamy Aiyar and re-established the place of Cilappatikāram among the Tamil psyche in this manner. Given the socio-political, cultural situation in Tamil Nadu at present, there is a Hindu resurgence, a Hindu civilizational consciousness arising in Tamil Nadu in a very big way. So as part of it, it is very important that Cilappatikāram is revived, and a lot of literary conferences and classes are conducted with the theme of Cilappatikāram. In fact, I am a part of a Bangalore literary group. We are a small group of about 6-7 people. We have studied Cilappatikāram in a very traditional way. Each verse, the entire text of Cilappatikāram in Tamil, along with the commentary and the discussions. We will also provide it as part of this talk. So this great epic has been translated in English also. The first translation was in 1939 by V.R. Ramachandra Dikshitar. That is the best and authentic translation. And then Alan Janielu, he translated it in 1965. Or Parthasarathi, again in 1993, which has been published by Penguin, which is also a very good translation. And a few films have been made on Cilappatikāram in Tamil, Malayalam, as well as Sinhalese. There have been a very few rewritings of the epic in novel as a fiction form. Amar Chitra Katha has a nice comic book on Kannagi. It is beautiful. In fact, all Hindu families should present the ACK comic book on Kannagi also, along with the books on Savitri, Damayanti, and Sita and Draupadi, so that Hindu children are aware of this great woman hero, a Shakti called Kannagi. So that ends my talk on Cilappatikāram. I again thank atharvforum for giving me an opportunity to speak on Cilappatikāram. Thank you.